was a lot more emotional than I thought, or than I had been. I think
Hmm.
it was a mixture of like the tired and fatigue, like all that kind of stuff would just make me, I cried so much, especially as the further we went on. Just like, why am I crying? Like I dropped my headphone. It wasn't that big of a deal, but just little things like that that kind of took me by
So
surprise.
if you have any interest in hiking, backpacking, or through hiking a long trail, such as the Appalachian Trail or AT, then you're going to want to listen to this conversation. My name is Kevin Strauss, and my goal is to make life easier and happier for everyone. I've been a backpacker for more than 25 years, but I've never done a multi-month backpack like these two beautiful people joining me today. To me, thru-hikers are rock stars. I've invited them here today because I want to know some of the ins and outs of thru hiking that are rarely discussed. Maybe it'll make my future thru hike or yours that much easier and better. The two people joining me today completed their AT thru hike together in 2023. Please introduce yourselves, your name, your trail name, where you're from, and then how you thought of yourself before hiking the AT and how you think of yourself now after hiking the AT. So, ladies first.
All right, well, I'm Tiffany, also known as Giggles on the Appalachian Trail, and I'm from Ohio. Um, the last one was just how I think of myself. I didn't miss anything, right?
Yeah, where you're from, and then like how you thought of yourself before the
Okay.
AT and how you think of yourself now that you are an official thru hiker.
Okay. Well, I guess I was really interested in the outdoors. I had a little bit of experience and really wanted to learn more. So, I also was, I guess, a very organized person, like a planner, and um, I don't know, just kind of like a go-getter. Like I've had different achievements that I wanted to go for. And then afterwards, I feel like I'm a little more laid back and easygoing, and I want to kind of slow life down, like how it was when we were hiking, compared to my super busy lifestyle I had beforehand. But I also feel like I do have more experience in the outdoors now, so I feel like more confident when I'm going about outdoor activities.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow, I could ask a whole bunch of questions to follow up on that. But before we get to all that, Two Shoes, let's introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Duncan. I also go by Two Shoes on the AT. Hopefully, I'll get some more trail names in the future. So I'm actually from Tennessee, and oftentimes I would get, "Hey, wow, I can hear your accent." Until we got through Virginia, then they were like, "Yeah, no, I can't tell. These guys, they're a little more intense." And I was like, "Yeah," but it was a wonderful experience. But before the trail, I actually thought of myself as like very mellow, very relaxed, very spur of the moment, kind of different from Giggles. I didn't necessarily have too much structure when it came to like my everyday life. I just kind of went with the flow with pretty much everything. So if you were asking me what I was doing 2 Saturdays from now, I'd be like, I don't know. Well, let's figure something out. Nowadays, I feel like after the trail, I've kind of learned how to structure myself a little bit more, which is weird to say because out there, it feels like you're totally free. It feels like you can go and do literally anything you want while you're out there. But also, one thing that they don't really talk about is, yeah, each week you're kind of like structuring how and where you're going to end up, how long you're going to be out there, how much food you need. So I think a lot of that experience really helped me kind of create structures that aren't too limiting, but end up, helping me out throughout the day and throughout the week and stuff like that. So I'd say kind of opposite from Giggles. I've grown in a little bit more of my scheduling aspect, just a little bit.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because, you think, oh, I'm just walking on the trail for, weeks, months at a time, and I can just do whatever. But there really is, or you really do need to have some structure and planning if you're going to make it the whole way and all. Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting, man. Into the question. Now, this is all like AT focus and stuff. Okay, so what first drew you to consider through hiking the Appalachian Trail?
Giggles, you want to go first, or you want me to?
Yeah, I can go. Um, so I guess I first heard about it just by being, I don't know, kind of near the area, but I had one of my managers at work, she actually had done it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, like that someone I actually know has done it. It's not just like this, thing up in the, like, only the crazy or really good people can do it. It's like a real person. But then I decided to actually commit to it when I was off of work one day and just went on a hike. And it was Ice Lakes in Colorado, and it was just the most beautiful hike I've ever been on. And it was also on my own, which was a little different for that job specifically. Um, you're like involved with a lot of people at the time, but it was just an amazing hike. I was like, I just want to keep hiking. And at the time, I knew that Two Shoes was wanting to do the AT, so I was like, okay, now I don't have to do it by myself. I'll see if he's interested, and lo and behold, he was. So
Wow. So, and did you have any backpacking experience before that?
a little bit. So that job actually was a camp counselor slash backpacking guide type thing.
Okay.
But at that time, my longest trip was through that job, and it was a 5-day trip. So
Okay.
I had been on a handful of backpacking trips, but
Mhm.
nothing nearly as long as the AT
Sure.
took.
Cool. But a 5-day trip, I mean, 4 nights, 5 days, that's, you're out
Mhm.
there, day in, day out. So yeah. So, and you already experienced with like going to the bathroom outside,
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
bathing
So I kind of
for.
had a handle of a lot of the general logistics.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And Two Shoes, so Giggles ropes you in.
Yeah. Actually, it was. I remember the day that she asked me. We were actually at that camp, in the laundry room of all places. We were just. I was trying to do up laundry, and then she came in. She's like, "I want to do this thing." I'm like, "What thing?" And then she told me, she's like, "I want to do the AT." And you wanted to, right? I'm like, "Yeah." Uh, but actually, I think the first time that I heard about the AT was probably when I was like 11 or 14. I was actually in the Boy Scouts for a while, and I had learned that a couple of my buddies were thinking about doing sections, and they did. And I was like, wow, I want to do that. They did like 40 miles. I'm like, that's so many, especially as like a 14, 11-year old.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was huge to me. And then by the time I rolled around 16 years old, we managed to get enough guys to go on a trip, and we did about a 40-mile section, and it was probably, if not one of the best experiences I've ever had. It was super funky, super sketchy, because our leader was giving us all these ghost stories about like
Yeah.
axe murderers and stuff like that, and we're sitting there under our sleeping bags like, is it going to happen to us, because we're on this trail. Thankfully we survived, but I didn't actually consider it until I was a freshman in college, and I tried going out there with my younger brother and my roommate at the time. I'm like, all right, we're gonna be living together like 24/7 rather than just at the apartment. We're gonna be here all the time. Can we stand it? And it didn't really work out. They both got annoyed with me, which is understandable. It's a long time to be with one person.
Mhm.
But it didn't really start coming together like, oh, this is possible, until Giggles was like, hey, let's do this. I was like, okay, yeah. So that's, yeah.
And how well did you guys know each other before this decision came about?
We actually, was it the year before that we had met? Because we had worked at
Um,
that camp for about a year already. We did one season.
Before, so we had decided the second season that we were working together. That was when the decision was made.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a little over a year and a half
Yeah.
ish.
Okay. So a little over a year and a half, and you guys decide that and you hadn't ever been on a backpack. Well, you've been on some camp trips together.
Yeah,
Actually,
we totally
yeah.
took a trip.
Yeah, one of the trips we had, it was another 5 day, and
Okay.
honestly, that one was challenging. But we realized that between the two of us, we were upbeat enough and positive. We were able to get it done pretty easily.
And you guys were leading that trip
Yes.
for like other people and all. Okay. So you guys had to really work together on that 5-day trip,
Right.
as part of your job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think that was part of
go ahead.
where we realized like, okay, we do work well together. Like we
Mhm.
overcame challenges and we were the only two that were able to like make the final calls. So that gave us some confidence going in.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, I've been following, backpackers I've been a backpacker for 25 years. So I've been following backpackers a long time. And, it's pretty well known that when friends, and you guys were friends, when friends start out hiking the AT together or a through hike together, it doesn't last very long. And there's two people, I'm not going to name any names, but there's two people on the trail this year in 2024, and they've already had some serious arguments and challenges, and they've separated and come back just in the first 1 to 2 months on trail this year. So that's a hard thing. And spoiler alert, you guys made it all the way to the end together as friends, and you're still friends. And so on. So good for you guys. So what was your secret to do that?
Honestly, it was peanut butter. She's a sucker for peanut butter. I would just pull it out. I'm like, hey, take this or this peanut butter, and we're set. Yeah.
That did help.
So that's sort of the you hear these couples when a couple's having an argument, you should take off all your clothes and have the argument naked, and the argument will end, or talk about whatever special word or something. And so your guys' go-to is peanut butter.
Yeah. I think part of it was peanut butter, but in my mind, we right before we even started, we sat down with each other. We're like, hey, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna end as friends, or if there's a chance that we won't be friends, I'm gonna personally, I was gonna step away from the trail in order to save that relationship, because I felt like that was more important to me. So we said, all right, open communication, and then if it ever escalates, let's say, hey, I'm angry, you're angry, let's give each other some breathing room for a little bit. That's really what happened, but the peanut butter was like 90% of it.
So you really talked it out beforehand and discussed the challenges that could be ahead of you. I mean, when things are all rosy and sunshine, it's no big deal, right? But when there's challenges, which there will be challenges, you guys had a plan and a mindset going into it.
I'd say so,
Once we got close to getting time to leave, I think I was more worried about making sure that friendship stayed together than actually the trail itself. That was a really big concern. So I was, both of us were really trying to make sure we did as much as we could to set ourselves up to do well together on the trail.
Wow, that's awesome. That's that's a great plug for couples counseling or talking things through, or having the plan beforehand, okay, we're going to give ourselves space if things are getting heated or something. So wow, good for you guys. I mean, that's advice right there for the community. If anyone's thinking about actually hiking with someone, talk it through beforehand and recognize that there's going to be some tough days. Can I ask about one of the bigger arguments or challenges?
I know more of the challenges. The arguments, I don't remember if I had held on to many of those, if I'm honest.
I don't even know if we really had we didn't have major arguments. It was just I don't know, we'd be talking about something and it would be a little more stressful than it needed to be, because we're just talking about I don't know, what we're gonna do when we get into town, and it's just way too much stress for that. And it's okay, I think I need some space, just walk by myself for a few hours, and then we'd meet up at lunch, okay, I'm good now, and it would resolve itself within a few sentences. So
a little bit of space really helped.
Oh yeah,
and knowing that we could say that and the other wasn't going to be offended,
not take it personally, I need space from you, and then they're not going to take it personally, I hate you when you're the worst person on the planet.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think.
Go ahead.
That separation at times was perfect. There were a couple of days where I was like, okay, I want to grind. I want to go as fast as possible without hurting myself. And I just want to fly. And Giggles is like, you can do that. I'm not going to do that. You do what you want. And I'm like, all right, I will meet you in town tomorrow. And I would there was one instance, one day we were in, it was right before Great Barrington, I believe in New Jersey. I don't know. I mixed up the states, but as we're flying through or whatever, I end up, instead of doing a 19 mile, like I told her, I ended up doing a 23 mile that day and getting to camp even at like 5:30, setting up and then just laying down. I texted her, I said, all right, I'm going to eat and go to bed. I did 23. I'll talk to you later. And then she was like, what? But yeah, having that ability to like separate and then listen to your book or your the scenery or listen to a podcast. It was just nice to have that break. And then once we came back together, being able to talk about, hey, you'll never guess what I saw, or these people that I met, it was just so nice.
Oh, well, because then you could share like that experience you had alone with that person, like right then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that was actually a big thing we did was we'd listen to our own books, and then come back, and sometimes if the other one was really interested in the story, we would just like summarize it for them, just tell them, and it would take hours. But other times we'd be like, okay, so I made it to this new part of my book, and I'm really excited. So just having new things to share with the other person, because like we're still seeing and experiencing a lot of the same things, but doing it
That
on your
is so
own
cool.
helped
Yeah,
to come back.
I've never heard of that kind of thing before. Like, yeah, we're listening, we're just hiking along, 10, 12-hour days or 14-hour days. So you're listening to a book or a podcast or something. And so you're in your own little world, but then you get to share it with that other person that you are, through hiking with, later in the day or the next day or something. Wow, that sounds really special.
Yeah, I think another thing that really helped with those books, especially for me, is any day that I was like really struggling and I didn't want to listen to music, I didn't want to use my phone at all, I didn't want to, put on my podcast or whatever. There'd be times where Giggles was like, "Can I tell you about my book?" And it was amazing because it was something for me to just focus on, and I didn't have to have it directly inserted into my head. And it was from somebody that I really appreciate, and it just helped me get through the day. Those days that were just really hard, just hearing that story from her perspective and hearing her take on it, it was really cool just to, be able to experience that.
Wow, that's so cool. And I guess even people who meet on trail can have that kind of an experience, like where like Giggles was just kind of carrying you through that day because you were having a low day or whatever, your mood was down or whatever that was. Then Giggles could kind of be there with you, sort of carry you through, and you can still interact, but you're not interacting with a book or a podcast in your ears, but you can still interact with Giggles, and she's sort of carrying you. And I'm sure it turned around on other days where Giggles might be having a rough day, and then you can carry her through.
Oh yeah. I think we were working on a series actually that he was telling me, so he did it quite a few times for me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So he could be there to support you also.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Wow. I mean, that was the first question, and
oops.
No, but that's exactly. I asked a bunch of different follow-up questions, but that's the whole point. Like, and I really, that's an insight. I've never heard that before about sharing, things that you're listening to with the person that you're hiking with. I'm curious, like how often or how many days was it that you did want to separate and not walk together? And also, how many times or nights did you not sleep in the same campsite or shelter? I'm assuming you had separate tents, but I don't know,
Yeah. There was one time where I set mine home so we could like save on weight and all that. But eventually we found that it was a lot logistically easier to have two separate tents or whatever.
Okay.
So to answer your last question, as far as the amount of times that we actually slept in different areas, we could probably count that on one hand, maybe 6 nights, maybe less. And one of those was, "Hey, I'm going to town. I'll meet you there tomorrow," sort of deal. Or if there was, let's say I had to get a package from the post office on Saturday and the day was Friday, I'd want to get to town. And then if I got there late, I could wake up early in the morning, go to the post office, not worry about the hours at all, pick up the package, and then just sit there, wait for Giggles. So that would, I'd say, yeah, the amount of times we actually saw separately, like in separate areas, was probably about 5 or 6, maybe less.
Just a handful. So you didn't like, okay, I'm just going to hike on my own for a week kind of a thing. Like that didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think we were worried about the or like at least on my end, I was more worried about like being able to catch up because based on what he was saying with like the post offices and stuff, he's the faster hiker, and that's why it was him doing those things. So especially a week long, I was worried about being able to catch up. But we did have like on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we would start hiking together for like an hour, and then we'd split up until lunch, and then we might hike together for like another hour and split up until we got to camp. So like we weren't together all the time.
Okay, so you had some of your own time on trail from day to day, or any given day you might be doing your own hiking that day, but then meet up here and there, just checking in, making sure both you guys are okay, everything's going well. You didn't lose the trail.
Oof, that happened a couple times.
That happened too sometimes.
Yeah.
How often did that happen? Because it's pretty well marked and trampled down. Is it harder than you might think?
Well, I think I seriously got lost like twice. But sorry, I'll let you say.
I was gonna say it's not hard to follow. For the most part, it is very clearly marked. Like you have a blaze, or you have like 3 blazes within eyesight, pretty much the whole time. But then, once we got up towards like New Hampshire area, it did start to get a little less well marked. There are just some that it looked they hadn't been repainted in a while. So it's like, is that lichen or is that paint? So I think it was like a handful, a little more than him, but where I would kind of get turned around and like in the same spot that this other girl that we would see fairly often. She's like, oh man, I got lost. I was like, was it the one with the creek? And she's like, yeah. I mean, so it was like, you found it pretty quickly after that, but it did take a minute. Like, okay, where am I supposed to be going? So
right, you weren't completely lost, but you could get off trail or off track a little bit, especially up in New Hampshire.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we ever really got completely lost.
I wouldn't say completely. There was that one time in the White Mountains where I went about a half mile off the trail, so it was an extra mile going there and back. And that actually ended almost in disaster.
Tell the story.
Okay. So we were towards the end of the Whites. We had just come down from the top of Mount Madison. And I decide, all right, we're exhausted. Our legs are tired. We just did the entire Washington, all of Washington over the Adams and down Madison. And I told Giggles,
range.
Yeah, we did a decent portion of it. And I said, Giggles, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go get some water, and I'm gonna set up camp, and I'll see you there. It'll probably be a couple hours, but I'll find a good spot, and we'll be set. So I decided to take the water filtration or whatever, and I forgot that I had both of them now, and she had none. So I'm hiking down this hill, whatever, going a little bit faster, and I gather up about 4 to 5 liters of water, which is a lot, and it's very heavy. So as I'm hiking along, I find a split in the road or whatever, and I'm hiking down the hill, and the trail goes this way. I see up ahead, the trail goes this way. This way is not very well trafficked because this way is getting to the Pinkham Notch Center, which is where most of their traffic comes through or whatever. So it's well maintained through here, not through here, or not as much through here. So I keep going straight. And I get about a half mile, and then after that half mile, then I see a blue blaze, and I'm like, that's not a white blaze. So I turn around as fast as possible, and I'm hiking up this hill. What I needed to do was dump out that water because I'm going uphill with like 6 liters. I'm exhausted, and I come up to the hill, and I see next to me was a couple that I had passed a while ago. I said, hey, did you see a girl with a blue backpack? And they were like, no, we didn't see anybody. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I was looking around, I found the correct direction, and I kept going. So my biggest fear was that Giggles had passed me and just was going to keep going because I told her prior to leaving her, I said, I'm going to leave my hiking sticks the way I always do, pointing towards the campsite. So you'll know you made it when you find my hiking stick. So I start hiking down the correct trail, and I keep going. I go for about another mile and a half, and I find a perfect spot. So I set up camp. I leave my hiking pole at the trailhead. I set up camp. I get the water filtering, and I pull out the stuff for cooking. And by now, I've been waiting for like an hour before I start cooking. And then an hour and 15 minutes go by, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, where is she? So I go to the trailhead, and I keep popping back and forth. And then eventually I get the idea. I pull out my phone. I climb up this rock, and I open it up, and I have 1 bar of service, and immediately phone call from Giggles. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I pick up, and it's her just saying, where are you? Where are you? And I'm like, I don't know. Where are you? I've been waiting on you. I set my stick down, and then eventually I said, all right, let's look at our map. We pull out our map. Turns out, I think, was it about 4 miles that you were ahead of me, give or take?
Yeah, I did end up passing him.
Because you're looking for the sticks, and they're not there,
Yeah.
so you keep going because, okay, I'm going to see the sticks. Hiking pole, like trekking pole.
And there were a couple times where I'd get to a place and like, that's a great campsite. Why is he not here? So I'm like, okay, I'll keep going. He's got to be at the next one. But then,
oh, we lost her.
Oh, the suspense.
I know, like she's talking.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yeah. So she did pass you. Now she's ahead. She's not going to see your trekking poles. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I went back, I grabbed my trekking poles, and I start taking down all the food and putting it into my backpack in my tent. I just shove it in.
So Giggles had passed you by, and she sees all these great campsites. And like, Two Shoes, what's your problem? These are amazing campsites. But she's still
I do need to clarify, there weren't a ton. There was just like 2 that I saw. Abundant. But
oh, they were definitely great campsites, and I could have stopped there. However, I stopped at the very first one that I found, and it was obvious after a while, and after I got that phone call, me getting lost really caused a lot of problems. So during that in and out phone call of just the staticky, the impossible reception, I was like, all right, boil some water. It'll take me about 2.5 hours to get there because it's super muddy. And it was just starting to get dark. Like the sun was going down, and I pack up all my stuff. I throw all my shoes really tight. And I'll be honest, I kind of jogged half of it. Like I was almost running. And she kind of told me
the adrenaline rush.
Oh my gosh, yeah. What was it you were telling me about the streams? How there was only 2 streams?
Yeah. So I actually wasn't even sure if I was on the trail because after a while I stopped seeing many blazes, and we just had like this paper map. Like we weren't using Far Out at this section. And so it had like different landmarks, but nothing showing exactly where I was. So the landmarks said that after the suspension bridge, which I did pass, you'll have 2 streams, and then you'll get to a bald. So I did the suspension bridge, and I passed 2 streams, and I didn't see a bald, but then I passed a few more streams to where I counted, and I got to 8 streams, and still didn't see this bald, and I wasn't seeing blazes at this point. I was like, other than the suspension bridge, I must have gotten off track somewhere. That's why I haven't found him, because I'm off the trail. So when I finally got service to be able to tell him, I was like, I think I'm on the trail, and I think it would be like about 2 or so, or I don't know, 2, 3, whatever miles from the suspension bridge if I'm on the right trail. So meanwhile, he's coming forward. I don't even know if he's going to still see me because I don't know where I am. But thinking about it now, this was a really rainy season compared to previous seasons. So probably things that weren't usually streams became streams that I was walking across. So that's probably where the confusion was there. And like I said, that section just wasn't super clearly marked. So.
And this was up like in the presidentials?
Yeah, right after presidentials.
Yeah.
Or right after the mountains, and you were coming back down through, or coming down it. Because I mean, I've hiked the presidentials a couple times, but obviously not the whole AT. But yeah, so once you get off the peaks and the ridge, and you're coming down through. Okay, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I think my strategy to find you was I had my headlamp on and I started singing. I just started singing anything that came to mind. I was skipping down. I'm like, Giggles, where are you? My feet are hurting. It's kind of that sort of deal.
Right, because you're not getting signal probably at that point. I mean, you're dropping down and everything. Like, you know, that's. I mean, you're just lucky if you're getting signal, you know, out in the woods at that point.
Oh yeah, especially New
Yeah.
Hampshire and up. Yeah, if you can get anything, that's a good day.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, and you did find each other eventually that night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard him singing and I was like, two shoes. But it we still didn't even know if we were on the right trail, but we were on the same trail, so that was a start. I'm like, okay, once it's light out, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And which trail were you on?
Oh,
We
we were
ended up
on
being
the
on the right
AT. It
trail.
just
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you were. So that's okay. So it was probably lichen and not a white paint, or it was just hard to tell, you know?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Good one. Good story. Okay. Wow. That's so fun. Um, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to skip ahead because we are just cruising through time here, and I don't want to keep you all day. Well, that was a pretty memorable story. Is there another memorable story worth share or that you'd like to share? Not worth sharing, but that you'd like to share?
Um, what do you think, Giggles? I've got one. It's the fish story.
the fish story. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Is
Go
that
ahead.
okay? All right. So this happens to be one of the best trail magics I've ever gotten. I think
Okay, cool.
it was up there with yours for sure. But
I'm not.
so
You don't have to give me confidence.
well, I mean, the knowledge that you gave us was awesome. But this fish was pretty crazy. So we're hiking in Virginia. It was about halfway through, I believe. And we come down this mountain, or I guess you could say this hill, and we're in this little area where there's a big old creek going through, and there's a suspension bridge. So we cross over this suspension bridge. It's around like 5 o'clock. It's rolling a little bit later. We're getting ready to finish up and get to camp. But we stop at this bridge to gather some water, and this man, his son, and a dog comes across the bridge, and he has a fishing pole in hand. He's got his some sort of
Like his
gator sort
waiters.
of deal. Yeah, yeah, waders. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to fish?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, why not?" I'm like, "All right, sure." And he leaves or whatever. And we're finishing up. We're grabbing our water, and I take a sip, and I hear behind me, "Well, here you go." And I look around, and there's a fish dangling from his rod, just flopping around or whatever. It's still moving, and he's like, "Here, you can have it." But the only catch is you got to take it off the hook. And I guess he was trying to like gauge if I was, gutsy enough for that sort of thing. So I'm like, "Are you sure you want to give me a fish? I'm literally somebody you've never met." And he's like, "Yeah." Uh, so I grab it. I'm like, "All right." So I dehook it. I grab the fish, and he's like, "Cheers, enjoy. Do you want another one?" I'm like, "No, no, no. I think this is enough." And then I look at Giggles. I'm like, "What am I gonna do with the fish? Do I throw it back?" She's like, "No." I was like, "I know how to gut it." She's like, "Okay, good, because I don't." um, and so what I did was I smacked it against the post. I stunned it and killed it. And for about a half mile, we hiked up this hill. I've got two trekking poles in one hand, a fish flopping around in the other, and it's just moving. It's dead. So we get to camp. And by then, I'm trying to set up my tent with one hand and a fish in the other. And I'm like, I gotta prep this. It's getting dark. So I pull out my super dull blade, my only knife that I have, and I try to like start opening it up. I start cleaning it, and I'm like, Giggles, do you wanna try? And she's like, yeah, yeah. So I get one side of the fish, and I get the head, and I think she gets the other side. And one of the friends that we had that was helping supply some of our gear, they actually, for fun, they decided to send us these tiny little Ziploc bags full of like different spices and different seasonings. And at the time, we had uh, lemon pepper seasoning, and then we also had Montreal steak seasoning. So I'm like, we're gonna get a little fancy up in here. And I don't know if you know this, but Subway, they have like little packets of olive oil sometimes.
Okay.
So I borrowed. There she goes.
We lost her.
Um,
Okay. Well, you can. She
but
knows the story. You can keep telling the story.
Okay, yeah. But I borrow her pot, so I open it up or whatever, and I oil the pan, and I go ahead and put the fillets on there, and I season them. I season them as much as I can, and I try to fry them in the oil. So I do that. I also set up our regular meal, and honestly, it was the best fresh fish that we've ever had. It was the freshest meal we had out there, other than maybe grasses and stuff like that. It was nuts.
Wow. So you cooked it on your camp stove, or did you do a fire?
We did a camp stove. It
Okay.
was honestly, it was getting dark to the point where I almost needed a headlamp.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of savored the meal. We were eating the fresh fish, and I was like, it's either I'm starving or this is the best fish I had ever. So I was definitely starving for sure. But afterwards, we were like, that was really good. We looked at each other for about 2 minutes, and I said, oh man, we got to bury these guts. And I don't know where my shovel is. So eventually, I think we go out there, we take turns digging a hole deep enough, and we managed to bury it because we have experience burying other things. But yeah, it was honestly kind of just nuts because we sat there after dinner as well. We were like, this random man just gave us a fish, just cause. And that was the craziest trail magic that I had experienced.
That is, I mean, a live fish, it's not like cooked or ready, you know, it's not dried out for you so you can just eat it. Like, yeah, so he talked about you guys hiked up and you cleaned it, you took turns cleaning it and had one of probably your best meal on the trail for the whole time.
It's pretty good.
And now you know how to clean a fish, right, Giggles?
Yeah, it was a great learning experience. Actually, something that I'd kind of wanted to learn at some point, but I don't really fish, so that kind of takes away an opportunity. But yeah, it was great.
That's so cool. Okay, so you cleaned it up, you ate it, you buried the guts and everything. Okay, how did you clean your hands? Or like, I mean, you got all this fish stink all over you. What did you do? I don't bring soap when I go in the backcountry.
Yeah, we had hand sanitizer.
We had hand sanitizer.
Okay.
And this isn't sanitary and it's not great. So that night, I think I remember washing my hands as best I could. They were still a little sticky. It wasn't great. And then in the morning, I noticed that I still had like little red spots on my hand. I'm like, oh, I'm glad that I'm not like, scratching my eyes and nose and stuff like that. So I still had blood on my hand. I was like, okay, I got to wash this. This looks like the axe murderer stories that I heard about.
Oh my God.
So it was kind of gross.
Like, one person would hold the water bottle and like pour it over, and the other person like rinse their hands. So we were able to rinse and then do hand sanitizer, and that was about the best we could do. So
yeah, were you able to get most of the stink out, or?
I'd like to say yes.
I mean, obviously a bear didn't come and get you.
Probably bad in general.
Right. Yeah. I think most of the other stink kind of just masked it. So okay. I think we were kind of safe.
Okay. Wow, man. I mean, because there's the eating and having the fish, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. When it's not like you just walk up to the sink and you've got awesome liquid detergent or something that's So wow.
Or unlimited water. Yeah.
Right. Isn't that one of the amazing things? So what are some of the things that like you really appreciate now, from the front country compared to the backcountry? Like, what are the big differences that you've seen and that people need to be aware
of? Front country as in like front country camping, or?
No, I mean, just like living day to day, in America,
Yeah. I think I really missed my cast iron skillet. That just straight up, that one, I just love it. I love cooking in it. You can cook almost anything in it. And it's not really ideal to carry one of those bad boys out there on the trail.
Yeah, that'd be kind of heavy for sure.
Yeah.
I have really enjoyed dry socks, and also the fact that even if it's raining, I'm like, it's no big deal. I can come back and I can change my clothes and take a shower. Rain doesn't bother me. So,
like, especially in the front country, rain doesn't bother you because you can just easily clean up, warm up, dry out. But on the trail, it's just such a hassle.
Yeah, so on the trail, it did kind of start to become just another thing. I don't know, it started raining on us. We're like, okay, like puts packs down, put the rain jacket, rain cover on, and then just keep walking. So it eventually started kind of become like a normal thing, and it wasn't a big deal. But sometimes it is nice when you don't have to worry about setting up in the rain or any of those other logistical pieces. But yeah, the front country now, I really appreciate the fact that I don't have to worry about like, oh, are my clothes gonna be soaked for the next few days? Or it's just like, oh, I can just change in an hour if I want. So
right, because it's just so easy now. If I'm tired of my clothes or they're wet or stinky or so sweaty, I can just change them. But in the backcountry on the trail, That's not happening.
Mhm.
Something that I've always noticed about or something I learned to appreciate really, really early on in my backpacking career is just how easy it is to get water in the front country, and just what the effort is to get water, basic life need in the backcountry. And I mean, when I started backpacking, it was 1 liter bottle. That's all you carried. And, that's it, and a single liter bottle. And, getting down to the creek and crouching down, and there's mosquitoes everywhere, and it might be kind of dirty. And whereas at home, faucet, done. It's just so easy. So, and I still just appreciate how easy it is and how lucky we are to have like city water or well water or something. It's just so convenient. Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. I could talk to you guys forever. Okay. What struck you most about differences between your expectations of what the hike would be like versus the reality? And I don't just mean physically, but also emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So this is, what were you expecting going in, and what turned out to be just completely different beyond just physical? You can do physical too, but other stuff as well.
I think one of the biggest shockers for me was this has been a dream for years of just doing the AT and seeing if I can do this physical challenge. And that's how I viewed it in my early childhood. This is a huge physical challenge that I want to see if I could do it. 2,200 miles, massive. And while I was out there, I think it didn't really hit me until Harrisburg, Virginia, that this is not necessarily it is a huge challenge. It's a huge physical challenge, but not only that, it is also a time and a place where you can start to experience the culture. You can start to see that there is this group of people that they love this style of hiking or this kind of like activity. And you can bond with them and share that experience and kind of learn more about them and the actual culture itself of hiking. And I didn't expect to, experience like a whole hiking culture. I kind of expected to see, like, when we got to the New York area, more meet with the northerners, whatever, and kind of feel around and see what they're like. And same with Virginia, see what they're like, and that sort of deal. I didn't expect to feel like this whole hiking culture. So that was very, very new to me, that idea. And honestly, I kind of fell in love with it. It's awesome.
Wow. Yeah. So you were thinking, okay, I'm doing this big physical expenditure. I'm hiking, I'm living on the trail day in and day out, but there's all the people and all the different kinds of people sharing the same kind of experience and passion and interest that you get to also bond with.
Right. And if I could piggyback off of that, like you said, there's all these different kinds of people, race, color, creed, just however, that they're all sort of doing the same thing. We're all trying to hike, and we're all going in, day out. We have similar problems. So it was very easy to bond with those people. It could be somebody that if you met in your regular life, you would never even think to talk to them. You would never think to, have a conversation or connect with them. But when you're on the trail and it's raining and you're hiking through water that's about this deep, you're going to be like, wet socks. They're like, yeah, this sucks, doesn't it? And I'm like, yep. So just stuff like that. It's really cool to be able to,
real mutual bonding over this big experience.
Yeah.
And Giggles, anything to?
That was also probably my biggest one. Was just so my previous backpacking experience, pretty much my group was the only people that I would see when I was backpacking. So I kind of expected it to be the same. And there were just so many people every day. You would pass tons of people, or they'd pass you, or vice versa. And like he was saying, where you just see or you interact with people that you might not normally talk to or become friends with. So
almost like leveling the playing field a little bit. Almost like leveling the playing field a little bit, where there's a lot of different kinds of people, but we're all doing this one big activity.
Yeah, you like stripped away all of the barriers, I guess, that you would normally have, and it's just like, okay, we can immediately be friends because we are both doing this really hard thing. And it's just a lot easier to talk to people. But I guess another one, it was more physically demanding than I anticipated. I Most of the trails near in Ohio, they're, some of them have hills, but they're not like crazy. And they're like pretty well maintained, like very, you can fit like two, even three people across. So it was just a lot more physically demanding than I expected, and I was just like, okay, this is actually pretty hard, and a lot harder than the trails I'm used to. But I also was a lot more emotional than I thought, or than I had been. I think it was a mixture of like the tired and fatigue, like all that kind of stuff would just make me, I cried so much, especially as the further we went on. Just like, why am I crying? Like I dropped my headphone. It wasn't that big of a deal, but just little things like that kind of took me by surprise.
So almost like hanging on edge emotionally, like where any little thing, like seemingly little thing, could kind of trigger you and really touch you deeply to the point where that you're releasing it, with tears.
Absolutely.
And Two Shoes was shaking. Did you experience some of that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think to piggyback off of what you said, now some people might think, oh, it's just an earbud. And honestly, when it comes to like our gear, since we're, isolated and it's difficult to even get into a town, much less get stuff from the town, that one earbud, that piece of gear that you've kind of narrowed down to, this is your kit, it can be like, it could be, I don't want to say as important as losing a water bottle, but it has more significant value to you now that it's not like you can't get it instantly. It's, you have to work towards getting this actual piece. So that specifically, I also felt that. But there were definitely times where I had my big three: eat, sleep, and drink water. If I didn't have at least all three of those, it was going to be a little bit difficult. So the sleep thing, I was a little okay with if I had like 6 hours versus the 8 hours. But if I didn't eat and I skipped a meal, ooh, I had to hike alone. It was one of those things where I'm like, hey, Giggles, you might not like me. I am hangry. So there would be times where I'm like, I got to separate. But yeah, I definitely was emotional out there.
Yeah. So you had some crying times as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to know. And men cry too, and it's okay to cry. I'll reference the Free to Be You and Me album and movie from like 1970. So this is, my early childhood. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Free to Be You and Me, but there's a song on the album. It was a movie called It's All Right to Cry. And crying can make you feel better. And I don't know why culture, we condemn it so much, like you're weak if you cry, but we don't say somebody's weak if they laugh, right? And laughter is just an emotional release, and crying is just an emotional release, but we judge it, So anyway, that's, and the Free to Be You and Me album, I highly recommend it. You can find it on YouTube, but it was like Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Lily Tomlin, Mel Brooks. I mean, all the big names, back in the very early 70s are on it, singing it, acting, and so on. So anyway, it's all right to cry. I hope you had as much fun listening to Giggles and Two Shoes as I did. However, the conversation didn't end there. In part 2, we'll talk about how we met over trail magic and how that trail magic turned out to be a key component in their successful completion of the Appalachian Trail in 2023. Until next time, peace, love, and connect.